we only got him for this segment, the next, so we're going to go to him now. The UK, and as well as Australia and the US for a great extent, but especially the UK, are testing grounds where they arrested BBC reporter Robin Page, who had a rural affairs show, because he said rural communities deserve the same rights as Muslims and homosexuals. They arrested him. We had him on the show and said the word homosexual is hateful. It'd be like if you called a white person a Caucasian, would they be arrested for racism? It shows where now a type of voodoo against science itself, you say heterosexual, homosexual, Caucasoid, Asian, you're arrested. They have spies in restaurants to hear if you criticize the open borders having to pay welfare, whether it's to white Eastern Europeans or black Africans. You're arrested and hauled in as part of a Soviet show trial. This is 1 inch from the re-education camps. It's come out in congressional testimony and FBI files that Obama, who was at meetings with Bill Ayers, where they talked about putting 50 million Americans in re-education camps. Yes, it's really happening. They've said if you don't agree with global warming and don't want to pay them carbon taxes, you should be arrested. That's in our newspapers, hundreds of them. It's in the UK papers. And Lord Monckton, they've called for his arrest. And he joins us, former top advisor, a scientific advisor to Margaret Thatcher, inventor, journalist, former newspaper editor of major dailies. Here is a headline: UKIP foster couple, our agony. And proudly, the town council says they were reported anonymously. They were members of the UK Independence Party, and they said that is racism. Well, right there's total lawsuit, because if they were racist, that's their free speech, but they're not. UKIP is openly fast-growing and scaring people, calling for the EU not to be making 80+% of their laws. People of all races, religions in it. They're afraid of them. The Marxists are afraid of them because they control the left and the right in that country. And now joining us is Lord Monckton. They've demanded an apology taking their kids, but they're saying they're not going to apologize right now. So this shows how frightening this has gotten, where people are now arrested in the euro. If they criticize the euro, that's being called racism. It's like when we say we don't want government-run health care, it's a nightmare. They say on MSNBC you're a racist. This is how the communists operate. Lord Monckton, thank you for joining us. Can you break down exactly what we're facing, and correct me if I'm wrong?
Well, in fact, you're absolutely right, Alex, as usual. What has happened here is that Rotherham Council, which is a local county authority, which is controlled by Marxists from the extreme hard left of the Labour Party, which seems to be most of the Labour Party these days, they took away 2 foster children from very good and experienced foster parents in Rotherham who have looked after many foster children before, often from very difficult backgrounds. And these 2 children were from an ethnic minority, and they had come into Britain via the EU immigration policy, by which Britain no longer controls her own borders. Now, the couple belong to the United Kingdom Independence Party, to which I also belong. Until recently, I was its deputy leader. Now I'm the leader of its Scottish division. And this party is not a racist party. It never has been, and it most certainly isn't. The party does want sensible control of immigration, but not done on a racial basis at all. But the left are very, very frightened, as you know, Alex, of any dissent at all. Any really effective party in opposition to the left, they are frightened of it, and they will use techniques like this for the sake of trying to blacken its name nationally. And this has spectacularly blown up in their face, because the couple went public and they said, we are not racists. The party we belong to is not racist. There is absolutely no excuse for this. We were not given any chance to have our say before the children were taken away. And I think what's going to happen is that because the local authority won't apologize, which of course is what it should have done straight away, the couple will eventually go to court and ask for what we call judicial review of the administrative decision. Well,
they have to, because it'll stand the charge that they're racist, because they belong to the fastest growing, one of the largest parties, with prestigious people like yourself and Mr. Farage leading it.
Well, and we've also just converted Lord Hesketh, who used to be the leader of the Conservative Party in the House of Lords. He is now a member of UKIP. We have Stuart Wheeler, who's our treasurer. He's a millionaire. He's been talking to 8 Conservative backbenchers about whether they would like to defect from the Conservative Party and join the United Kingdom Independence Party. This is a rapidly growing party, the second largest party in Britain in the elections to the European Parliament. This is a major force to be reckoned with. It may well indeed be the largest party after the upcoming...
But never mind your real policies. We'll just call you racist.
So that's what they do. See, they're frightened of us. They're very, very worried that we're beginning to make inroads not only into the Conservative Party, but also into the Labour Party, because the Labour Party has been always very soft on immigration, on the simple metric that people who come from other countries and live here tend to vote left rather than right. And so the Labour Party wants to let in as many immigrants as it can while pretending to be reasonably tough on immigration. That's the name of the game. And so they don't like UKIP pointing things like this out. Now, in pointing these things out, we are not being racialist. All we're doing is saying that we need to make sure that we have reasonable control of our borders.
Well, you're completely overrun. And here's the deal. We bring in 30 million illegals, and they all vote for gun control, basically. They all vote to take our rights. That's the socialist mode. Bring in foreigners who are affiliated with the state and then outvote the original citizens. And now it's getting so bad in Europe and so bad in England and so bad here. People are finally waking up as our economies go bankrupt and as the Treasury goes bankrupt.
That's exactly it, because we can no longer afford to allow people from all over the world to come here and go straight on the dole and claim benefits from hard-working, working-class British people who are paying ever larger amounts of taxation, not to support themselves and their families, but to support the families of people from all over the world who, on any view, have absolutely no right to be here and have contributed nothing themselves to our society. Now, it's not racialist to point this out. Even the Conservative Party is now beginning to say this. And the left are becoming frightened.
But it came out with Tony Blair. They had a secret deal for a decade with the EU to bring in unlimited illegals, criminals,
right.
You name it.
He kept this quiet, and he didn't let anybody know this was happening. The Conservatives were too lazy to ask. We found out. We broke the story. And, of course, the left hate us for this. They know that now we are effectively replacing the Conservative Party as the opposition because we know the facts, we smoke out what's going on, and we then come out and say so. And they don't like this. So the left are now more frightened of us than they are of the Conservative Party because they can see that the way things are going, the United Kingdom Independence Party is going to replace the Conservative Party as the party of the right in Britain. And we are much more effective operators than they are. I was in a meeting in the House of Commons just a few hours ago with the President of the Czech Republic on the European question. And he was saying, well, you know, we all now need to think about whether the euro has a future, whether the European Union has a future. And he said they will call us racialist, even for raising these questions.
That's right. Lord Monckton, stay there. Incredible. We'll hear about your meeting with a European Union president in a moment. We'll be right back. Insider billionaire investors like George Soros and John Paulson have recently made massive moves into gold, purchasing what Bloomberg News described as gold hoards. Soros alone doubled his holdings in a single day. Russia's Vladimir Putin has doubled down on gold, increasing the country's holdings by over 100%. With $1.8 trillion under management, the bond king Bill Gross, the world's preeminent bond fund manager at PIMCO, has warned investors of the dangers of QE3 and inflation. And what's he betting on? You guessed it, gold. Friends, this is Alex Jones for MidasResources.com. For more than 15 years, I have exclusively used Midas Resources for all my precious metal needs. Whether it's bullion or collectibles you're looking for, Midas Resources is simply the best. I own my gold as a hedge against inflation. This Federal Reserve fiat currency could go the way of the Deutschmark and the Weimar Republic anytime. In these historically dangerous times, it makes sense to physically hold gold and silver. Midas already has some of the best deals in the industry. But if you give them a call and mention the radio special, they will give you a list of the day's super specials. Midas brokers are standing by to answer all your questions at 800-686-2237. They also have a lot of informative free literature explaining the opportunities and risk of holding precious metals. They are ready to answer your questions at 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237. Lord Monckton will be with us till about 40 after. He's going to give us a breakdown on the tyrants' latest attacks on our liberties via the Green Movement cover they run. He is probably the world expert geopolitically on what the socialist and Marxist and basically armies of evil control freak dumb are up to. But you need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I have found bribery going on at the Capitol that made the front page of the paper. And they called me up and asked if I was a racist, and it had nothing to do with race. And I said, why are you asking me this? And they said, we want to just know if you're a racist. And then the guy started giggling on the other end of the phone. They know it's a weapon. Okay? And you need to understand, as Lord Monckton has traveled all over the world, is exposed, the carbon taxes will kill 1 billion people, most of them brown. So Lord Monckton actually goes and feeds people starving in Haiti. And I'm so sick of the eugenicist, population reductionist left calling themselves left. Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. These people are control freak, authoritarian monsters who want control of the resources. Lord Monckton, I'm sorry I'm ranting, but it's so over the top to be constantly called racist by these people when they are certified, from my research, absolute anti-humans, period.
Well, in particular, they are anti-black and brown and yellow humans. People who tend to be poorer than the average are the ones who are going to get hurt first and worst by their environmental policies. There's no doubt about this. I've just been reading the next UN climate report. They come out every 5 years. There's another one coming out next year. And I am now an appointed expert reviewer for that document. And it is full of the same sort of rubbish that's in the previous documents. And I've had to write so far 70 pages of comments saying you're going to have to clean this up and start doing honest science again, because the kind of policies that these people advocate using the bogus science from the UN's climate panel are policies that will indeed be making poor people poorer still. I don't think I would go so far as to say as that they're going to end up killing 1 billion people. There have been books by people like Paul Ehrlich saying that they would like to see the population of the world to reduced from its present 7 billion down to 1 billion people, losing 6 billion.
Sure. Just to interrupt, because you raised that, reading your papers at Science and Public Policy, and give that URL out for folks. If they implemented the carbon taxes of Copenhagen, there's already 30+ million people starving to death, 50 million, total. If you take associated deaths from malnutrition, there's an additional 20 million on the 30. But I was actually going off some of your research and some other research. I mean, correct me. If they implemented their plans, would it not be 1 billion dead over a decade?
If they get away with what they're trying to do, then very large numbers of people in poorer countries will die. It's very difficult to put numbers on it, frankly, because it depends on how much of their extremist nonsense they get away with. And I'm glad to say that gradually more and more scientists are now standing up and saying, look, we can't turn our backs and just be quiet anymore. We're going to take the risk of speaking out, even though we will then be called racist and all sorts of other names, and they will vilify us and go after our reputations. I've had it all thrown at me, Alex. Oh, you say you're a member of the House of Lords, and they say you're not, and you're just a racist. All these childish insults, anything rather than talk about the actual science, which doesn't add up. There's been no global warming now, this is breaking news, for 16 full years. None whatever. And here they are writing yet another UN.
And by the way, you were the first to break that down with scientific research. They now admit all that in the news. But going back in the brief time we have in this segment, longer segment coming up, Lord Monckton, go back to your meeting with the Czech president there at the House of Lords.
Yes, this was fascinating. It was the House of Commons, actually. This was fascinating because quite a large audience came. And he was saying that the left are gradually pushing their way in, taking everything over. And he said that you now really can't tell the difference between the major policies of the EU and communism. He used the word. He has seen this, and he's finding it increasingly difficult to to restrain himself from speaking out about it. He's just got a very good book just come out called Europe, The Shattering of Illusions. Maybe you should get it at the Alex Jones store. It's a very good book.
Yes.
Very short but very clear. And it explains the process by which the European Union is dismantling democracy in exactly the same way as the environmental movement are doing it. And, of course, the European Union is right in there working with the environment.
Well, they call themselves a new Soviet. Stay there. Break that down. I'll give you the floor for 10 minutes when we come back, and then I know you've got to go to another important meeting.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
Coming up, the Democratic Party is now running around saying that guns are terrorist weapons. So now they want to take your guns in the name of the war on terror. The chairman of the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has provided aspiring terrorists with an idea. Use a .22 rifle to take out power transformers. And they're now saying we've got to ban guns because terrorists may use them to shoot up power transformers. Just hoping copycats go out and do it. That's coming up. Okay, Lord Monckton, you've got the floor here for the next 10 minutes. Break down the points you're making. This is not hyperbole. The way they've bankrupted Europe with socialism, then their answer is bring in even more foreigners who then threaten to riot if you don't raise taxes again, to then engage in more social engineering. France is over 80% tax for people that actually work. Where is all this headed? Where is Europe going? And as England and the rest of the UK starts to wake up to the fact that you're under this domination and EU bureaucrats are exempt from taxes and the parliament is ceremonial, where does it all end? And what is the latest, Lord Monckton, on their latest strategies to shut the power off in the West and seize control?
Well, what they're going to do next is they're already paying 3,000 EU bureaucrats more than the Prime Minister gets, which he gets $250,000 a year. And there are now 3,000 EU bureaucrats who get more money per year than the British Prime Minister, and they don't have to pay tax on it, and he does. So this is becoming a pampered overclass, which is gradually destroying the economies of all the countries that belong to it. There's a big row going on at the moment between Britain, Germany, France on the one hand, and we're on the paying end, if you like, of Europe, and the receiving countries who, as you say, are demanding more money, more social engineering, more feather bedding, and they're saying that we who are relatively prosperous should be paying for this, and the British people no longer want to do that, want out. If we were to leave the European Union, then we would no longer be running an annual deficit. Britain is a prosperous enough country that if we stopped being in the European Union, we'd have no more annual deficit and we could start paying back the national debt. And if we don't leave the European Union, then Britain will go down, as many other countries of the European will go down, as the ever-growing costs of various welfare handouts completely outstrip any possible capacity of taxpayers to pay for it. You're quite right. The top rate of tax on the rich in France is now 75 or 80%. In Britain, it's already gone up to 50%. It was 40. I got it down, in fact, from 60 to 40 when I was working at 10 Downing Street, and I worked with the then finance minister to take it down to 40. Huge resistance from the bureaucrats until they realized that we were getting more money from the rich by taxing them at a lower rate.
And you're now able to force the Prime Minister to actually act like a constitutionalist, and they're now stealing and adopting, which I guess is a good thing, if they actually carry it through, the UKIP platform.
Well, of course, the Prime Minister is now in a very hard place because his backbenchers, the people who don't have jobs in his government, but are all sitting in Parliament wondering what to do with themselves because Parliament no longer has any role in making legislation. That's all done for us now by Europe. It's just a kind of ceremonial body, as you say. So they're beginning to become quite fractious, and they have realized that while UKIP remains a growing force in British politics, and a very rapidly growing force, then never again can the Conservatives win an overall majority in Parliament. And if they can't win an overall majority, they can't govern on their own.
And by the way, you are the model. What UKIP has done, if we could get a real constitutional, libertarian, real conservative, pro-liberty type group in the Republicans, we could reverse things as well. But this is the globalist model.
Your Tea Party is doing a very good job in that general direction. You now have many Tea Party candidates in the Republican Party, but they haven't yet penetrated right to the top. And there was the problem. For the second time running, the Republicans chose the one candidate who arguably didn't have the slightest chance of ever beating Obama. When I first heard they'd picked Romney instead of, say, Herman Cain, who would have beaten Obama into a cocked hat, I knew then that they were going to lose. And sure enough, they have. And you can say that maybe Obama fiddled the vote in various places, and the Democrats do this much more ruthlessly on a larger scale than the Republicans do. But the fact is that Obama won it because the Republicans don't have the fight.
That's right. Herman Cain or anybody who had fight would have destroyed Obama. Mitt Romney tried to become Obama, and now their argument is, oh, we need to become more socialist. That's why conservatives didn't win. An absolute manipulation.
Well, this is the trouble. And of course, if you want to beat Obama, then do the one thing where he's really vulnerable, and that is take him to court because he has put up on the White House website a birth certificate that's manifestly bogus. I was approached by lawyers in the United States last week and asked to produce an affidavit looking at the evidence that the sheriff had assembled and working out what were the mathematical chances that that document was genuine if their evidence was correct. And the answer is that there was a chance that it was genuine. It was 1 in about 75 sextillion that it was genuine. And the rest of the time, it was very, very clear this is a bogus document. But will the Republicans lift a finger to do anything about this? No, they won't. They're terrified of the left, which on issues which really matter to it, like keeping Obama in power, they will do anything to destroy and discredit the reputation of anyone who did raise that matter. And the right in America have become frightened of this. They're terrified for their reputation. They won't speak out against Obama, and that's how he got away with it. And the answer is you do have to fight. When you have somebody who possibly was born somewhere else, but certainly has an alien outlook on the future of America, and he's there in the White House, it's no good sitting back and letting him dismantle your country. The Republican Party has got to learn to fight on ground where it's going to win.
And by the way, going back to UKIP being really the model over here, and some of the things Ron Paul's done, and Campaign for Liberty being the model, you guys, for what, over a decade, have been hammering that the EU makes most of your laws when no one was listening. Now, and I'm not just saying this, I read British newspapers every day, and UK papers, and EU papers. You're now setting the agenda in spades, in triplicate, even though most of the time they don't give you credit. That doesn't matter. The real value is you're beginning to set the agenda. People in the UK are realizing there is an authoritarian takeover. People in the European nations who are being told to give up whatever sovereignty you had left to the bureaucrats, they're waking up. Just like if we expose globalists have hijacked us, and that global corporate interests have hijacked us, and that mega banks brag that they've hijacked us, and that Obama has told Congress that NATO and the UN is over our military, if we simply expose what they've arrogantly bragged about, their arrogance will bring them down if we just do what Ron Paul did in his farewell address. Expose that it is a global government run by criminal bureaucrats and their financial backers like George Soros. Lord Monckton, isn't it time to just embrace reality as you've done and admit what we're under?
I think what you have to do is to say, we will not let democracy die. We will not allow the vision of your founding fathers to disappear. We will not allow these bureaucrats worldwide, the Brzezinskis of this world, to set up a global government behind our backs and then inflict it upon us, whether on the excuse of the environment or any other excuse. We will not allow regional governments like that of the EU any longer to remain as unelected and undemocratic as they are now. We will win our democracy back. And those on the left who don't like it, get this. We are not going to allow you to prevail. We, the people, still believe in ourselves. And for as long as we believe in ourselves, whatever you try to do, whatever bureaucratic structure you try to create, you will not prevail. We will prevail whether you like it or not.
Well said, Lord Monckton. I want to give your website out. It's on screen for prisonplanet.tv viewers. scienceandpublicpolicy.org, a veritable encyclopedia of graphs, documents, proof. And again, I've been watching Lord Monckton for more than a decade before he became popular here in the United States. And just it's uncanny how accurate he's been, predicting, exposing their frauds. I mean, if there's one guy shoving the sword into the dragon's heart, it's Lord Monckton. That's why he's demonized and attacked and lied about so savagely. The system hopes that you're not paying attention and just buys into their surface attacks, but more and more that's not working. In just the 2 minutes we've got left, I know you're going to be traveling to the Middle East soon. What is the latest UN global government power grab that we're facing?
Well, what they're going to do next is they're going to try to establish a global climate regime with the UN in charge. This is the thing they've been trying to do all along. They were thwarted at Copenhagen because I got hold of an early copy of the draft treaty in which they were going to set up a world government. We've stopped that, but they're still trying. And they're trying to say that the problem is ever more urgent, but that can't be right. Because since the second assessment report of the UN in 1995, there's been virtually no global warming since then. It's stopped. Doesn't mean it's stopped forever. I would expect to see it resume next year, actually, but only at a very slow rate. A rate so slow that we don't have to worry about it. And so what we'll be doing in Qatar at the 18th of these annual climate conferences, where the UN little by little is trying to build itself a new power base around the environmental movement, we will be there to stop them. We're not going to allow anti-scientific extremism to prevail. We're going to say that after 16 years without any global warming, and in 16 of the 18 years they've been meeting, there hasn't been any global warming. The time has come to face reality, realize that the computer models were tweaked so as deliberately to get it wrong and exaggerate the problem, realize that in fact there is no problem. Hurricane Sandy had nothing to do with global warming. It was a purely natural...
Well, this is pure voodoo, like witch doctors 5,000 years ago saying, give me the power or the devil god will eat the sun during an eclipse. I mean, they get on the news, they tell school children here, I know they do it in England, hey, you saw that thunderstorm? That's because your dad had a fire in the fireplace.
That's right. It's all this pathetic dumbness. I mean, if you look at Harvard University, 2,800 undergraduates have just voted to tell the university that it must take all of its $30 billion investments out of fossil fuel companies because they're destroying the planet. Of course, they're perfectly happy to do their studies by the light of the electricity generated by these fossil fuels, but no, they get on their high horse and they make these kind of pietistic statements. Now, these are the people who are supposed to be the future leaders of America, and it frankly makes me sick that they are as easily fooled and as scientifically ignorant as they are. The fact is, we now know they've got it wrong. Here, just very quickly, going back to 2008, when the world's leading climate modelers said that if there was 15 years or more without global warming, the models would be wrong. They would have exaggerated the problem. Well, hey, there's now been 16 years without global warming, so on their own criteria, the modelers have failed. And the entire basis for this scam in the computer models is now proven to be wrong by the failure of that.
But, sir, as you know, in closing, there are useful idiots at the lower level. This is their religion of feeling good and being control freaks. That's why they're really attracted to it, like moths to flame. At its heart, it's about shutting off the West industry because the globalists in all their admissions say that the wealth engine doesn't make us dependent on socialism. They want to shut it down to make us stand in line like poor Russians to get sausages and nylons.
Here's the answer to this, Alex. If you go on to scienceandpublicpolicy.org and download what we're calling the futility report. It's done by my colleague Chip Knappenberger, and he took my equations on how to work out how much it costs to make global warming go away and how little global warming you will make to go away if you try to intervene. And he has worked out that if you shut down the whole United States from this year, then by 2050, in about 40 years' time, the world would be 0.08 Celsius degrees cooler that is a 1/12 of a Celsius degree, a 1/6 of a Fahrenheit degree cooler than it is today. And if you kept on not having a United States for 100 years until 2100, then the world would be 1/3 of a Fahrenheit degree.
But then the final key, as you know, General Electric and others, they are exempt from having their coal power plant shut down. So it's a purely cold-blooded mafia operation to shut down their competition, and then they can have artificial scarcity and make you buy from them for 3 or 4 times what it previously was.
That's exactly it. And of course, all these huge subsidies paid to windmills and solar panels, all of that is designed to transfer wealth from taxpayers via these companies into the pockets of the Democrat Party over there. The Scott Nats here are doing it, so are the Labour Party. And what is happening is that those who are paying through their higher electricity prices and higher taxes to subsidize these useless windmills, the companies that run the windmills are making so much money in subsidy that they are then making donations to the left-wing parties that are pushing.
It's a money laundering operation.
It's a money laundering, so by which taxpayers' money ends up in the pockets of the political parties that are backing the environmental movement. That's what this is really all about. It's a money and power grab by left-wing political parties in the speech.
Because they cannot produce. I've never met anyone who is a leftist operative that knows how to tie their shoelaces. They have horrible children. They can never have a business. They are mentally defective midgets who want to run our lives.
That is exactly the problem we now face. These are people who, they are intellectual pygmies. They've never run so much as a bath for themselves in their lives. The second footman does that for them. These are useless people. They're useless appendages on society who have managed to get themselves into positions of power, and they are intent, and let's get this clear, intent upon shutting down the West, if they can, without a shot being fired, by fooling the political and bureaucratic class into thinking that we have a problem that we don't have, and which, even if we had this problem, Alex, of global warming, it would still be at least 10 times cheaper to do nothing about it today and to pay to adapt to any global warming and its consequences.
But again, it's about them casting themselves as saviors of the world, and then they can decide who can have a business, who can live 220 square foot homes where they charge you giant property taxes on them. Incredible. Lord Monckton, thank you for all the time, and we'll talk to you hopefully when you're at the next UN conference.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be there in just a few days' time. I'm going to Lithuania first to speak to the Free Market Institute there about the future of Europe. From there, straight to Qatar. So in a few days' time, get in touch. We'll do another interview straight from the horse's mouth, as always. So God bless you, Alex, and God bless America.
Thank you, guys. Set it up now, then, since we've got him online. Thank you. There goes Lord Monckton. I'm going to skip this network break because this information is too important. We're going to get him on next week from the latest UN conference, and I've got New American Magazine posted at prisonplanet.com. Alex Newman, another excellent article, and it's got links to the UN announcement. They want global carbon taxes now, and Obama is announcing that he's going to have all these speeches saying we can get the welfare paid and have the bailouts if we have a carbon tax and a VAT. And they will shut our economy down. That is their goal. These people are not idiots. They are criminals. And they want to run your life. They relish it. A powerful person doesn't want to run your life, would be embarrassed. Powerful people just want to go be alone. Powerful people are reclusive. Really powerful people are artists and just want to be left alone. Scum want to sit around like a bunch of peacocks and run our lives. And I'm sick of them. And I want the scum out of my life, and I know you want them out of your life.
Were from an ethnic minority, and they had come into Britain via the EU immigration policy, by which Britain no longer controls her own borders. Now, the couple belong to the United Kingdom Independence Party, to which I also belong. Until recently, I was its deputy leader. Now I'm the leader of its Scottish division. And This party is not a racist party. It never has been, and it most certainly isn't. The party does want sensible control of immigration, but not done on a racial basis at all. But the left are very, very frightened, as you know, Alex, of any dissent at all. Any really effective party in opposition to the left, they are frightened of it, and they will use techniques like this for the sake of trying to blacken its name nationally. And this has spectacularly blown up in their face, because the couple went public and they said, we are not racists. The party we belong to is not racist. There is absolutely
control the left and the right in that country. And now joining us is Lord Monckton. They've demanded an apology taking their kids, but they're saying they're not going to apologize right now. So this shows how frightening this has gotten, where people are now arrested in the euro. If they criticize the euro, that's being called racism. It's like when we say we don't want government-run health care, it's a nightmare. They say on MSNBC you're a racist. This is how the communists operate. Lord Monckton, thank you for joining us. Can you break down exactly what we're facing and correct me if I'm wrong?
Well, in fact, you're absolutely right, Alex, as usual. What has happened here is that Rotherham Council, which is a local county authority, which is controlled by Marxists from the extreme hard left of the Labour Party, which seems to be most of the Labour Party these days, they took away 2 foster children from very good and experienced foster parents in Rotherham who have looked after many foster children before, often from very difficult backgrounds. And these 2 children...
The show trial, this is 1 inch from the re-education camps. It's come out in congressional testimony and FBI files that Obama, who was at meetings with Bill Ayers, where they talked about putting 50 million Americans in re-education camps. Yes, it's really happening. They've said if you don't agree with global warming and don't want to pay them carbon taxes, you should be arrested. That's in our newspapers, hundreds of them. It's in the UK papers. And Lord Monckton, they've called for his arrest. And he joins us, former top advisor, a scientific advisor to Margaret Thatcher, inventor, journalist, former newspaper editor of major dailies. Here is a headline: UKIP foster couple, our agony. And proudly, the town council says they were reported anonymously. They were members of the UK Independence Party, and they said that is racism. Well, right there's total lawsuit, because if they were racist, that's their free speech, but they're not. UKIP is openly fast-growing and scaring people, calling for the EU not to be making 80+% of their laws. People of all races, religions in it. They're afraid of them. The Marxists are afraid of them because they can. Now, we only got him for this segment. The next, so we're going to go to him now. The UK, and as well as Australia and the US for a great extent, but especially the UK, are testing grounds where they arrested BBC reporter Robin Page, who had a rural affairs show, because he said rural communities deserve the same rights as Muslims and homosexuals. They arrested him. We had him on the show and said the word homosexual is hateful. It'd be like if you called a white person a Caucasian, would they be arrested for racism? It shows where now a type of voodoo against science itself, you say heterosexual, homosexual, Caucasoid, Asian, you're arrested. They have spies in restaurants to hear if you criticize the open borders having to pay welfare, whether it's to white Eastern Europeans or black Africans. You're arrested and hauled in as part of a show.
No excuse for this. We were not given any chance to have our say before the children were taken away. And I think what's going to happen is that because the local authority won't apologize, which of course is what it should have done straight away, the couple will eventually go to court and ask for what we call judicial review of the administrative decision.
Well, they have to, because it'll stand the charge that they're racist because they belong to the fastest growing, one of the largest parties with prestigious people like yourself and Mr. Farage leading it.
Well, and we've also just converted Lord Hesketh, who used to be the leader of the Conservative Party in the House of Lords. He is now a member of UKIP. We have Stuart Wheeler, who's our treasurer. He's a millionaire. He's been talking to 8 Conservative backbenchers about whether they would like to defect from the Conservative Party and join the United Kingdom Independence Party. This is a rapidly growing party, the second largest party in Britain in the elections to the European Parliament. This is a major force to be reckoned with. It may well indeed be the largest party after the upcoming...
But never mind your real policies. We'll just call you